everybody. I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring on experts in franchising to give you advice to help you govern and guide your business to success and growth. I've got with me today a good friend of mine and a fascinating person that's really talented, Jeff Horst. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Rocket Barn Marketing, based up in Canada. There are a few things you ought to know about Jeff before we jump into this. And I'll also introduce the topic. But Jeff, he actually grew up Mennonite. A lot of people don't know that. His family left when he was about 10. He's a rock star drummer. You wouldn't be shocked knowing his cousin Matt that he's related, with the music vibe. But Jeff's talented that way. Also very talented in digital marketing. A new dad, relatively new dad, right? How old's Hudson now?
Yeah, almost 8 months.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. So, but I'm going to let Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Rocket Barn? And just so you guys know, I brought him on because Rocket Barn aligns so well with us and the way I feel things should work in the franchising industry. They're really striving to become the most trusted and valued franchise marketing partner in the franchising industry. And with the topic that we've got today, you'll see why I brought Jeff on. But Jeff, tell us a little bit more about Rocket Barn, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Great to be here. Yeah, so Rocket Barn's been around for going on 13 years now. And at the beginning, we weren't in franchising. And so it's been a journey for us. We met our first franchise partner 8 years ago and fell in love with franchising like so many people do. And yes, we're based in Canada, but our employees are all over the world. And most of our clients are actually in the US right now. And so it's a lot of growth there. Yeah, our specialty and kind of focus is mainly on the consumer marketing side, supporting the franchisees at the local level with their pay-per-click SEO strategies. That's kind of our bread and butter. But yeah, great to be here and excited for this topic.
Yeah, so let's talk about the topic, guys. So I brought Jeff on because we got a little bit of a different topic today. Rather than have him explain to you how you could fix SEO and PPC at the local level, which he could do extremely well, it was actually his idea, so I'll give him the credit. We want to talk today a little bit about how do suppliers and franchisors make sure they're in a good fit relationship, and specifically, we want to share a little bit of insight behind the veil, a little bit of what are suppliers looking for to make sure that we're getting the right relationships with our franchisors, and what should franchisors be doing to make sure they're getting the right and aligned partners to provide services for their franchise system. So, and Jeff, I think we should share a little origin story, like how did this come about? Because, early on, I think we both, were probably eager to work with anybody in franchising. Didn't matter, let's close a deal. But that's changed for both of our organizations and us personally. Tell us, like, what experiences did you have that as a supplier made you realize, not all franchisors are created equal, and we don't necessarily want all business?
Oh, yeah. No, it's, I go back to the very first client, the very first person I sold. I think I took it very personally. It mattered to me that what we set out to do was going to be achieved. And in our industry, in marketing, there's no guarantees. So that's a really, scary venture to go down. Yeah. And I remember the first, social media had just come out. Our first client was, excited about Facebook. It seemed to have a really good fit with their business. They were like a med spa. So there seemed to be a really good fit there. But truthfully, in the first 3 months, we were not able to deliver on the goals that we both agreed on. And the reality was they weren't realistic goals that we realized, but there was a partnership. And I came to the client saying, hey, look, we can't deliver on what we said. And that was a scary conversation to have. Mm-hmm. And to my amazement, the client said, that's okay. Thanks for being honest. What can we do next month? And we formed this relationship. So I feel like we were very honest up front, that first relationship, and that carried on. And we were able to achieve so much together as we, learned things, and nothing got stale or just sat there. And so that was our first relationship. I'll jump ahead, maybe about like 5-7 years later, we started working with some really big hedge funds. And these were like, it was exciting because they'd have, 500 locations. They had full decision-making authority over all of them. So it was like, fast growth, exciting. It was in the dental space and in the vet care space. But it was almost the reverse. We had a really hard time in that relationship. Our values didn't align, and so much of their goals were just revenue based, which isn't wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But how they were going about getting there was mainly through acquisition. And us as the marketing partner, we were given small budgets and impossible tasks. And we kept saying that to them. Hey, look, these don't add up. We have all the data here, and we can tell you this is going to be a fail. But they just kept ignoring us. And eventually, after 3 CMOs turned over in a span of 2 years, the one client fired us. And it was just kind of this realization that wasn't going to be a winning relationship. And we were doing it for the wrong reasons. You know, it was good money. It seemed to be like a very profitable, exciting opportunity. But after we lost that client, I interviewed our team and realized, you know, the team was not motivated by what was going on. There was never a belief we could win. And the toll of that played on our team. We kind of learned from that. And I guess to where we are today, and even mistakes made with franchise brands. I think the last thing I'll say on this is, to me, like, there's no win if you work with someone for 6 months or 1 year or even a few years, and then you break up and nothing was really, you know, gained or learned through that time period. And I think so often it's about the sale and not looking about a sustainable long-term relationship. And at the end of the day, like, that's what I believe we really want to be working towards. Is there a win-win here? And I look for that. I look for partners who are willing to enter in a relationship that we can both win in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, my story is obviously a little different, but strangely similar, right? We had a couple of relationships with franchise systems. One was in the pet care, one was in the financial services sector. We'll leave it super generic, but I'll never forget.
No names. We don't need to throw names.
Never
No
names
shade.
in this case. Yeah, no shade thrown here, but it was an experience for me where I've always been, I don't know, I hate to say it this way, but I've always been a little bit of a Boy Scout. Like, I don't want to work with someone who I know is doing something shady. I've always been wired that way. But these were both great accounts. They were growing, you know, cool opportunities. And but specifically on the financial services side, like there was some, we were rapidly getting things set up. There was agreement in place to do some custom work to help them with some huge tech debt that they had. So we were really thrilled about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, CEO pulls brakes and says, I think we're done. And then I was like, we'd already done all the work. And his team wept. Like, literally, I stopped by the office, team's crying, like, Dave, like, you guys were going to solve all these problems. Now we're going back to square one. We're going to lose 30 hours of productivity a week, like, weeping with me. And I realized, wow, the leader of this group had zero interest in the well-being of his staff, the well-being of his franchise owners. Literally told me that as I approached him. I was like, hey, what's going on, man? And he said, I don't really care, to be honest with you, about this or that or their success. And so he actually, he owed us money, but I was like, I don't even want your money at this point. I don't want anything to do with you. So we just walked it off, wrote it off as bad debt. And I learned a really important lesson. You know, like, as a supplier, for us, it doesn't matter. Like, one of our mantras is reputation over revenue and people over profit. That's a personal mantra of mine. I don't really care if you want to give me a big check. If I don't feel like I can trust you as a supplier, if I see you don't follow the first rule of franchising, which is franchisees must be wildly successful, and then all other success follows that, then I'm going to be really wary and pretty much stiff arm you and send you some other direction as a supplier. So I feel like you and I are pretty well aligned around those values. And funny how very different experiences can lead to the same conclusion for a business.
Yeah, no, and I relate because I remember the employees and the people we really interacted with day to day also were heartbroken. And, you know, there was this trust at that level, but it was clearly who was leading the charge, and the decision making was top down, and it was not aligned with our company values. So yeah, I relate to that too.
Yeah, and there's woeful negligence that can happen. There's also, we've had relationships with organizations where leaders were completely disconnected and weren't really interested in managing the success of the franchisees at the local level. Nothing malignant, I'd say just negligence, because they were distracted with other priorities, right? It wasn't their first priority.
Right.
When there's not somebody who's willing to take ownership of a project, that's another red flag for us, where I say, I don't know if this is going to be successful. Our success management team will come after me if we close a deal on our team where it appears that that's the case, kind of a rudderless project. And so those are other red flags for us that we pay attention to, of, if the franchisors aren't willing to invest in their success, whether it's with our technology or not, it's going to be very hard to make that succeed. We can't fix that deficit. That's what we've found.
Yeah.
Tell me more though. I mean, so as a supplier, sorry, let's talk from the supplier perspective. Then let's flip it and talk about the franchisors. What should they look for? What are some other things as a supplier that when you see, you realize, I don't know if this is a fit. I don't think we can move forward with this client.
Yeah, well, I know it would be so great to have someone from a brand on here too, and you can get both sides of the story.
Agree.
So I think for me at the beginning, it's really about just connection. Like, is there a connection there? And it's so hard to put it into like, it's not like boxes that are necessarily checked. It's more like, is there a realistic expectation here? Like when I hear about the pain points that are going on, that's my biggest thing in the initial conversation. What are your pain points? Is there actually a pain point big enough worth solving here? And kind of to your point, is this going to get the attention it needs? Is this just, where's this coming from? Is this, is this something that the whole organization's aligned on, or was this a complaint from one franchisee? So there's a lot of, I guess, for me, a lot of investigating, but through kind of questions and just kind of understanding what the energy is that's coming back to me. Is this a frantic, everything's burning and we're supposed to come in and just save the day with one brand new strategy? That's always challenging. And then just expectations, really digging into what do they expect. And you can just tell in a conversation how organized the other individual is. And I think that's often my encouragement, is for people to, when you come into those conversations, I get it. Like, we're the ones that are having to pitch our services as suppliers. But I look at it as both ways. Like, for me as a supplier, it's a big investment to work with any brand, with the type of work we do. It is a commitment and it takes up a lot of resources. And, I'm looking for success stories. I want wins for both parties. And so if I don't see that as a possibility, then that's not necessarily an interest for me. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of rambled on a number of things there. What do you add to that?
Well, actually, I wouldn't add to it. I want to ask a clarifying question. So you talk about organization, and guys, we love franchising, but we also know how thin-staffed you are. Like, that's one reason why I love what we do, because people genuinely need help from you. They genuinely need help from us because they sometimes need to augment their executive team and their intelligence with the knowledge that we can bring to the table. But sometimes you run into folks that really don't have a plan. They're super disorganized, and it's difficult to help augment the lack of a strategy. So tell me, let's dive into that a little more. Like, what are specific things that franchisors should have in place, or you really hope they have in place, so that you can have a successful relationship with them?
Yeah, I don't think I want to answer that, because so what popped in my head, like very common in franchising is the whole pilot approach. Let's test this out with a handful of locations. I think of it as dating before we make this big commitment to each other.
Right.
And we embrace that. We don't try to bypass that process. We're not coming in to try to, move you over overnight. We're often saying, hey, let's learn about each other's organizations, because to answer your question, then so much of that is discovered through an actual relationship. In our industry, there's a lot of technical needs. So who is running that ship? We can ask all the right questions up front, but when it comes down to it, where are we on the priority list? Does things get done? And even something like when things don't go according to plan, how do you work through that conflict? And, those are all things that I would call like dating experiences. Right. And, and so and then even the franchisees, like, who are your franchisees? What are they like? Are they, have they felt like they're, been sold a bill of goods and now we're supposed to solve it through some marketing solution? Or, do they have a belief in what's happening there? Like you said, is the focus of the brand to really make them wildly successful? And I don't know. I feel like we ask a lot of questions up front. We get a sense, but then really that pilot phase, a lot of the real stuff comes out. And I think for them, it's a good chance to test us out. Like, are we able to deliver on what we said? Can we prove the results that we talked about? A lot of people in our industry complain about customer service. It's probably one of the most common complaints I hear is, I talked to the sales guy at the beginning and everything sounded great, but then who's the team behind him. And that's something we pride ourselves at Rocket Barn is like, that's what we put first, is we want to make sure we're excellent communicators and that experience of onboarding and all that stuff is done well. So yeah, I think the pilot phase is really critical to both sides of that relationship.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about something you just brought up. So you mentioned customer service. So flipping the script, right? For you know, as suppliers, we want to make sure that we're getting into a relationship where we can help you succeed. And there are things that we use to pre-qualify you, franchisors, to make sure we're not just asking questions so we can sell you, but we're also asking questions to make sure, is this a good fit for us? Because we have teams, right? We have humans that work behind us, and we want to put them in a position where they can be successful and they can be happy. Our first rule of non-franchising, but franchise supplying is we want our team to be wildly successful, right? And then you're wildly successful. So it's really parallel, I think. But if we flip that script, you'd mentioned customer service. And I just want to share a quick story because it's very relevant. I was doing a little consulting a while ago with a group that's growing, and they kept saying, I was asking why do people buy from you? And they said, we provide great customer service. And I was like, that's wonderful. What are your marketable attributes that are reasons people buy from you? And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, everyone says they provide excellent customer service. There's nothing that differentiates you there. And so I wanted to ask you a follow-up question on that. As a franchisor, right? You're looking for a partner that's truly going to help you and your Z's succeed. Everybody talks about how good their customer service is. What are things as a supplier that you think a franchisor should be paying attention to really validate that claim and validate any claim? But let's talk about customer service first, because it's kind of a slippery slope. Everyone talks about it, and frankly, some people don't know who isn't great at it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It can just be vanilla or just words, right? So how does it actually come alive? And I think we all know what that's like. Like if you go to I just had this recently, actually, when we were at the IFA in Vegas, and I went to a couple different restaurants. Okay. So I went to the Irish pub, and the service was actually, it wasn't that great. My point is, it wasn't that great a service, right? And but there was someone there that came, took our order, did all the things, but not someone who was really looking to create an experience out of that part of it. And oh, we're just there for the food. Well, no, we're there. We brought customers and prospects, and we're doing a dinner, and so you want the experience to be good. And the next night we went out to the Italian restaurant. I don't know if you got to go there at the hotel. Unbelievable service. Like we're talking like just engaging, and the server was apologizing at the end because he thought the food was coming out slow. And it's like, dude, you made our experience amazing. The way he read off the menu, the way anything that happened, like a subtle little thing. There was 5 of us at the table, and I was kind of in the corner, and he could have leaned over someone to fill my glass, but instead he walked around to the other side, poured a cup of water, and then slid it across the table to not interfere with our conversation. Like it was the most subtle little things, but I don't know. For me, you could feel all that. And when I bring that back to us, I think the biggest point in our industry is people don't want just another friend in the customer service rep. They want an expert. So in marketing, they don't need another person that comes and, oh, let me get back to you. I'll talk to someone else about that. No, they want like a trusted advisor, someone that they're putting their money and their trust into. And we had to learn that. It's not about just being great on the phone or being a fun, nice person. It was about being valuable and knowledgeable, which actually led to much higher satisfaction scores. So that's just a tangible example for our business. But to me, it's all the little details. It's how do you interact with that person? And, I love going above and beyond. And, to me, I think it's a matter of like, do you care about the experience or not? And you have to hire people who have that level of passion. I was going to swear, I don't know if I can swear on here, but I was going to say like the give a shit factor. You can beep it out if you want, but you either have that or you don't. And we have to hire for that. We have to look for people who just have that desire and want to create that kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The thing that I find with franchisors where they sometimes miss the boat is there are a lot of fun people out there. And I just want to reiterate something you said that maybe take it in a little slightly different direction. you and I are fun guys. People enjoy, I think, spending time with us. You send out cool socks to people, and by the way, thanks. They're excellent. I wore them yesterday, actually, but they're my favorite. So there's something to be said about like experiences that are superficial. Like we can start there, but you said something before I want to go back to, which is trusted advisors. As a supplier, I'm looking to find, as part of my discovery process, the person in the group that has the competence that I can see can lead a project through to success. Likewise, I want to become the person that they lean on to say, Dave, I need help with this. So I'm gonna spend more time. These are things to look for, franchisors, by the way. These are, get the notebooks out, but you really should be looking for people that can provide you unique insights you didn't already have. If I'm just reading off to you some industry report and using that as my data, and I have nothing new or unique, then I'd be a little wary. Doesn't mean they're the wrong fit, but make sure they've got the expertise and the insights that can lead you to success and innovation and creative thought and true answers to the questions you and your franchisees are trying to solve. That's a big one in my book. That if I'm a franchisor and I'm trying to find a partner, who do I look for? It's not the guy that's that's never sharing insights and doesn't have any. It's the person that's truly entrenched in the industry, knows what's happening, and can give you advice confidently to say, hey, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Which leads me to another question for you, Jeff. How often do you find yourself in that advisory role with someone? How comfortable is it for you to tell them that's a bad idea, or to say, nope, I don't think you want to do that? How often do you find yourself doing that? And let's just start with that.
Yeah, I mean, in my role today, I'm not as client facing, and I don't get into those conversations. And I've got incredible people on my team who are way more confident in making those calls. For me personally, I've never had an issue saying what I believe. I've always felt like that's important, even if they disagree or it opens up an important conversation. I'm not a yes man to just kind of go along with what the customer wants, because I've learned that never works out either. I think though, in the decision-making process, are we a good fit? Yeah, like I think being honest and sometimes saying, no, I don't think, here's why I don't think we're going to be a good fit, or here's maybe someone else who's a better fit for you. I think saying no to that is an important thing to do. But I don't know if that's what you're meaning. Are you meaning more in like the ongoing advisory role, or are you meaning in customer service, or are you meaning in kind of the sales decision-making stages?
I think it should be infused in an organization's culture, but I was really specifically referring to that kind of that upfront consultation where you're trying to find fit.
Okay.
Yeah, which
yeah, I mean, we're pretty transparent. I think, like here's an example. I think a lot of people want to hear that you're a full service agency in our industry. They would like to hear that. Oh, great. That sounds simple. We want to just find a plug and play model. Well, reality is we can't do it all, and we intentionally don't do it all. We do our thing really well, and we're collaborative. We work with other partners. And yes, that might be a little more work, but you're going to get an expert in each area. So just being upfront about that. And sometimes people go, oh, well, I only wanted a full service. Okay, no worries. If they're not even open to hearing what a collaborative model could look like, I'm not there to lie to them or create a false sense of who we are. So, it's things like that. And it's uncomfortable because, oh, of course, this could have potential. But if they don't see that, and those are kind of deal breakers, I think it's important to be upfront about those things.
Yeah, I agree. There's a time in my life I was a little bit unscrupulous in many ways. In my teenage years, my grandmother, though, she was kind of like an ethical anchor and like a good example to me. She lived into her 90s. She was just a sweetheart, but she was really clever and funny, but a good upright lady. And so when this is not meant to be super dramatic, but as she was on her deathbed, my cousins and I rented a van. We all drove up to see her. She's in Alberta, and so the first thing she says to me when she sees me is she pats me on the cheek and she says, "You look so handsome with your face shaved," because she didn't like that I grew facial hair. But then she said, you need to guard your reputation with your life, because your reputation precedes you everywhere you go. And very lucid, very, very, very articulate, words that kind of the last thing she ever said to me. And but I've always thought about that because she said it to me because I was a bit of a miscreant growing up, so I had a bad reputation. Never anything too bad, but she said it to me for that purpose. But I found that to be very true in this business space, and especially in franchising. Everybody's had that experience where somebody sold them something that they couldn't deliver. Everybody's had it. You and I have had those experiences where we misunderstood someone's requirement, or we came in a little more confident than we should have, and we missed something big, and so it didn't work out as well as we would have thought. Everyone's had that experience, but the important thing is, like, when you work with somebody that's willing to upfront tell you, hey, look, that's not us. I just had that this week. Somebody, he was so excited, many locations. We'd already done some preliminary work, and he's like, hey, Dave, so we're going to get started. Let's do this. We're pumped that we're going to sign right now. And then I said, well, okay, no, wait, you just said something. Tell me a little bit more about what your vision is there. And he'd augmented kind of the scope of what we talked about previously. Like, now I want you to do this and that and the other. And I stopped and I was like, hey, now I don't want to be a wet blanket, but this, what you're talking about over here in this channel, that's not something that we do. We can make it work, but you don't want to use this for that. You want to use a tool like this because we're great at this and all those things we talked about before. But if you're really amped up and excited because you want us to do that, then I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the right fit for us. We should focus in on what we're great at, not try to bend us and get us to do something that's not really built. We're not
Right.
built. And he said, he's like, honestly, like, I'm a little disappointed. So I really want to work with you on that. He's like, but I appreciate you being honest with me because neither one of us wants to go down that road 6 months later and realize, wait a minute, we bit off something we can't chew. So I've tried to always live by grandma's advice, but every business should. But franchisors, there are certain franchisors out there that a lot of suppliers don't want to work with because they've built a reputation of burn them and churn them. Like, it's an egotist issue where I can never do anything wrong. It's always my suppliers that are screwing stuff up. And frankly, like, I think you and I both would probably say, hey, looks like we're not a fit. Let me introduce you to somebody. Like, that's kind of how I would approach that. But tell me a time where you've run into that situation where you've had to tell someone no. What led to that? And for suppliers to learn or not suppliers, but for franchisors to learn, like, how do you make sure you don't become that supplier that people don't want to work with, or the franchisor people don't want to work with?
Yeah, no, for sure. The one that's coming out to my mind, we actually completed a 6-month pilot. And the client was they were actually quite excited. They were, not that everything went perfectly smooth, but they were excited about where it was going. And I think from our end, we just uncovered there was some turnover in staffing, and there was just clearly not alignment from top down. So the more we moved ahead, it was just challenging, and we just could tell that the writing was going to be on the wall, and we didn't want to just keep dragging this on and create a really unhappy breakup in the end. So for us, we didn't believe. My big question is, I'll go to my team, what's your belief that we can make this a success? Like, and if there is any inkling, like, I want to dig into that. Okay, so why are you concerned? What are the things? And it can be a whole bunch of different reasons, but if we're not unified on where we're going and a belief that we can get there, that's immediately a plug for me. And the client didn't even see it. They didn't understand. They were like, well, we still think this is possible. And I've made the mistake before too, where the client begged and wanted to stay on, and I caved, and exactly what we predicted ended up happening, which I didn't want. I was hoping for, something else to happen. And then those are never fun conversations. It's not fun to say, I told you so. Like, there's no fun in that conversation. And I think, that's why I think the pilots are so important, and we're very honest. Like, it's an investment, and we're okay to walk away. Like, after a pilot, we've made no money. We've lost money, like, on our end, for sure. We put more resources in than we get back, but it's a good chance. There's an expectation, and it can be that it doesn't work out. So yeah, that's a couple experiences.
Yeah, well, I love that you brought up pilots, because we mentioned it before. A lot of people steer clear of pilots and say, nope, either you want us or you don't. We're not that way either, and it's because of this discussion we're having today. Part of what we want to do is validate with them that what we all understood to be the case is the case, and that we can deliver on what we said we can deliver. I think it's not a lack of confidence, but there are too many unforeseen variables that you just can't scope them all, that we want to make sure we figure out. There's one other reason I love pilots, and I want to ask you for some feedback on this too, and it's the franchisors, this is the silly part of franchising. That's what I like to call it, but it doesn't matter how smart the franchisors are. The franchisees don't trust them. After about 6 months, they're like, wait a minute, why am I paying you royalties? It's so dumb, right? Because they have this business model and they're making money every month because of the franchisor, and they're always spitting in their eye. But pilots also help a lot for franchisors, and one reason I'd strongly recommend that you consider this a requirement when you bring on new vendors, but you need to make sure it's the right fit. But also you need to have the internal validation that's peer-to-peer, and have early successes peer-to-peer, not just corporate stores, but always infuse a couple of franchise owners that aren't corporate owned into this process, because now you've got peer-to-peer validation, which will help you accelerate adoption. But talk to me about pilots from your perspective, Jeff. Like, why do you guys love them so much?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I totally agree. I think, empowering for us, it's about empowering the franchisees to be not forced into making a decision like, oh, I've got the minimum marketing spend, I have to spend this. And, I wish I could not spend it. We want the energy to be, oh, that was a great investment, I want to come back and do that again. And that takes time. It takes a lot of education, a lot of peer-to-peer, like you said, getting them excited. But yeah, no, I think I'll throw it another way too, is even in our mature relationships with the clients, and there are these large, like I think about one brand in the pet retail space, they've got about 500 locations working with us. And when we try to do new things, if we try to do it across the entire board and something doesn't work out, there's a lot of risk. Yeah. And there's always that, okay, we want to get moving, like let's get this going. And we've learned through some trial and error that it's better to do it a pilot, even within, like, of course they're going to work with us, but let's just test this out with 10 or 20 locations. And let's think about that pilot. How do we structure it? Back to your question at the beginning of like peer-to-peer. Well, who are the influencers in the network? Who are the ones that are going to actually help us make this successful, are willing to go through a little bit more of that up and down? But then we're trying some new pilots. Like right now we're doing this kind of academy pilot with a brand where they're selecting struggling locations, and they're willing to throw some money from franchisor head office in as well. And the idea there is to kickstart them, to get them going. So I don't know. I think pilots just have so many potential, even in an ongoing relationship, and there's different ways to look and use them. But yeah, then you go through the selection process, and what's the goal? Why are you doing this at the end of the day? And there should be a good case study that you work out of it, or get out of it at the end.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back to, let's go flip the script back to the franchisor side, because you said something that is admirable about you that I want to make sure we highlight in this discussion, which is franchisors should also be looking for suppliers that don't say, here's the program, take it or leave it. Right? That's a really dangerous relationship to get yourself into as a franchisor. It doesn't matter how big you are, how big the supplier is. When you start working with someone that's very inflexible, it should be a red flag. Like this program you just mentioned in passing, the Academy program, where they're throwing money at a little bit more money. They're investing in their franchisees that are struggling, and you as the supplier are stepping up. And I'm assuming you're providing some additional services there, additional attention, mentorship, things like that. I might be misreading the situation, but like that type of a relationship, it actually sends the right message that the franchisor is investing in the franchisees. So you obviously got a good culture match, but two, from the supplier side, we're willing to do things a little bit differently because we can see an opportunity to help you succeed. That's a great mindset to look for in your suppliers.
And I'll just say, let's go to the other side of it, because you want to find the balance in everything. So yes, you don't want the inflexible supplier, but you also don't want the super flexible supplier, because franchising is built on systems, and it's the organizations that really have a great process and can confidently duplicate what they're doing, that has value too. And I think we've made the mistake sometimes of chasing the ideas and being too flexible. So I'll just add, yes, it's admirable, but don't, just because someone is super flexible doesn't make it good either. I think we always try to look through what's feasible and balance it out. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. You don't want the not flexible, but you don't want the too flexy option as well.
Well, it's because it's not sustainable. And thanks for bringing the counterpoint, Jeff.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if somebody's uber flexible, there's no system in place, that means you're not going to have replicable results. So I'm glad you brought that up. And it's not sustainable for them. They're going to have to manage the flexibility of personnel, not systems. which means they're making less money, and over time their margins shrink. And now as a supplier, they're not going to be viable. We've all seen people come and go in the industry, and it's not helpful for anybody. So yeah, thank you. That's a really important point to bring up. Jeff, if we want to, let's refocus back on the franchisors for a moment. From their perspective as a supplier, any other parting wisdom, things you would share with franchisors that are looking for a new supplier in any category? What else do you think they should be focusing on as they're looking for who should I select to provide that service?
Yeah, I think it's always good to get multiple options, and maybe that's obvious to say, but don't just because you met someone at the IFA or you have one relationship. I think it's good to find out who's out there. I think for me on the supplier end, like coming in, really knowing what your objective is and your pain point. So some kind of RFP or some outline of the project, and to me, being organized in that really helps the conversation move along. And I think I always like to talk about budget. I think people sometimes are weary of, I don't want to show my hand. I don't want to show how much money I've got here. And I just like that being an open dialogue, because for us, we then are honest about what we can do within that and create a more realistic plan. But I get it. That can sometimes be scary, or you feel like you're exposing yourself. So yeah, I don't know. In our industry, at least, I think it's really important. And I don't know, anything else jumping up for you as I'm talking?
Yeah, I've got one more. So there was a time in like the early 2000s when everybody wanted an all-in-one solution, right? It'd be so convenient to have one collar to grab. But that world quickly changed. Probably 10 years ago was the last time you should have looked for an all-in-one solution for about anything. So I think one of the things that I would focus on as a franchisor is focus on people who are true experts in specific areas, and also suppliers that play nice in the sandbox with others. Because no matter how good somebody is, or some technology is, or some marketing service is, they're not going to be the best at everything. And so if you work with someone that's like, no, I demand you use me for everything. And no, I don't want to work with these people. No, I don't have APIs. No, I don't have webhooks. No, I can't share data. I'm not willing to get on a call with those guys. That'd be a big red flag to me, because so much of the world today is finding the right technical piece that fits the solution, the problem you've got, and making sure it then is intertwined with everything else that you're doing. So I'd say take an ecosystem approach, and also validate that you have suppliers that are willing to work with other people, play nice in the kiddie pool, because otherwise you're going to have some trouble down the road with data, with relationships, with franchisee performance. That's where it's going to hit you, is in unit level performance. And that's the last place you want to have any impact as you're making changes. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, you made me think. Yeah, you made me think of something. Now I'm blanking on it. No, what you were just saying, I feel like I'm totally blanking on it right now.
It's okay.
Having a brain fart. Sorry, repeat what you were just saying and it'll come back to me.
Just talking about like making sure that you've got suppliers that can collaborate together and have the right connections, because if you don't, it's going to impact you.
I got it.
It's back.
This might be obvious because we're talking to franchise brands, but there's actually a lot of suppliers who aren't in franchising, and you're their first, time coming into franchising, and they don't get it. And I think that it's super important to work with suppliers who actually understand franchising, because it is so unique. And I'll just add on to that, like, you talked about the challenge earlier, or questions around customer service and everything. There's a lot of people who want to put technology in to solve problems, and that doesn't always work in franchising, because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with small business owners who are busy. And I just see a lot of like, you need to have a balance in that. And and I'm speaking about our services, it's not okay to just use a portal to log in. Like, people need to ask questions. Well, how will ad work, and why is this not working, and what's a click-through rate, and all these types of things. And if you're just trying to work with some big agency that's never worked in franchising, I think there's a lot of bumps along the way. So advice would be, and maybe it's just obvious, but work with brands that do understand franchising and have gone through those pain points and can come in and be a positive experience for your franchisees and you.
Yeah, that's a great thought to end on. because I've seen a lot of emerging brands that don't take that advice. Like, no, I'm going to work with Earl. He's my neighbor. He's been doing my marketing for my window washing business for 8 years. He's going to do great. And I met a guy who went down that road for about 15 years. Had a buddy who coded some really old tech, and he was showing it to me, and I was like, "Oh no, you got a problem." But he couldn't look past the fact that he needed an outside expert in franchising to help him grow his franchise. So he's stuck. He hasn't sold a single unit in 2.5 years, but it's part because he's got a rough tech strategy in place. So anyway, yeah, find experts. That's a great way to end this. Jeff, you're fantastic. Again, guys, Jeff at Rocket Barn. They're a fantastic marketing firm. I highly recommend them personally. You can look them up. Is it rocketbarn.ca, or what's the right URL to find you?
.com, rocketbarn.com. And I'm active on LinkedIn, Jeff Horst. Check me out and send a connection request. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Jeff, thanks again. We sure appreciate you.